Imagine you're floating in space, staring at the endless blackness, stars twinkling in the distance. It's silent, breathtaking, and, wait. If your spacesuit tears, will you explode instantly? If you take off your helmet, will you freeze in seconds? And what about the sound? Do explosions make noise in space? Space has always fascinated us, but thanks to movies, TV shows, and common misunderstandings, a lot of what we think we know is actually wrong. Today, we are uncovering the truth behind 12 of the biggest space myths you probably believe. Let's start with one of the most dramatic myths. If you go into space without a suit, you'll explode instantly. Movies love this one. A character is thrown into the vacuum of space, and boom, instant explosion. But in reality, that's not how it works. Your body wouldn't explode, but you would be in serious trouble. Without air pressure, the oxygen in your lungs would rush out immediately, and you'd pass out in about 15 seconds. Your blood wouldn't boil, and you wouldn't freeze instantly either. If someone got to you within about 90 seconds, you could actually be revived. Another myth is that there's no gravity in space. We've all seen astronauts floating in the International Space Station, making it look like there's no gravity. But the truth is, there's still gravity in space, just weaker. Astronauts are actually falling toward Earth, but because they're moving so far sideways, they keep missing it. That's what creates the effect of weightlessness. Even the moon has gravity, just about 1/6 of what we feel on Earth. Now, let's talk about the idea that the Great Wall of China is the only man-made object visible from space. This is one of the most famous space myths, but it's completely false. From low Earth orbit, astronauts can see many human-made structures, like roads, airports, and even large cities at night. But the Great Wall, it's actually pretty hard to spot because it's made of materials that blend with the natural landscape. Here's a big one. Space is completely silent. Now, this is partly true, but not entirely. In the vacuum of space, there's no air, so sound waves have nothing to travel through. But space isn't completely silent. Astronauts on the International Space Station hear all kinds of noises from the station itself, like fans, pumps, and even their own voices. And in some parts of space, like dense gas clouds, sound can actually travel, just not in the way we hear it on Earth. What about the myth that the sun is yellow? If you were to ask a child to draw the sun, they'd probably reach for a yellow crayon. But in reality, the sun is white. The reason it looks yellow from Earth is because our atmosphere scatters shorter wavelengths of light, like blue and violet, making the sun appear more yellow. If you were in space looking at the sun directly, which you shouldn't do, you'd see that it's actually a bright white light. Now, let's bust the myth that NASA spent millions developing a space pen while the Soviets just used a pencil. This one gets thrown around a lot, but it's misleading. While it's true that early astronauts used pencils, regular pencils weren't ideal because the tips could break off and float around in zero gravity, becoming a hazard. The space pen was actually developed privately by the Fisher Pen Company, and NASA later bought them for just a few dollars each. Soviet cosmonauts ended up using them too. Another common belief is that asteroids and meteors are always fiery streaks in the sky. This happens when a space rock enters Earth's atmosphere and burns up due to friction. But in space, asteroids and meteors are just dark, cold rocks floating through the void. They don't burn or glow unless they hit an atmosphere. Here's a shocking one. Black holes suck everything like a vacuum cleaner. Many people imagine black holes as giant cosmic whirlpools that devour everything in their path. But in reality, black holes don't suck. If our sun were replaced by a black hole of the same mass, Earth would continue orbiting as usual. Black holes only pull in objects that come too close, and their gravity works just like any other massive object. Speaking of myths, you've probably heard that you'd freeze instantly in space. The truth is, space is a vacuum, which means there's nothing to conduct heat away from your body quickly. Instead of freezing instantly, you'd actually lose heat very slowly through radiation. It's a slow process, not the instant ice cube effect that movies portray. Now, let's debunk the idea that Pluto was demoted because it's too small to be a planet. While Pluto is small, that's not the reason it lost its planet status. In 2006, the International Astronomical Union redefined what it means to be a planet. One of the criteria is that a planet must clear its orbit of other debris, And Pluto doesn't do that. It shares its orbit with other objects in the Kuiper Belt. That's why it's now classified as a dwarf planet. Another fun one is the myth that we only use 10% of our brains, and that space travel could unlock the rest. The idea that humans only use a small fraction of their brain is pure science fiction. Brain scans show that almost all parts of the brain have activity, even when we are resting. Space travel is amazing, but it doesn't magically unlock hidden brain power. Finally, one of the most famous space myths, the moon landing was faked. Some conspiracy theories claim that the 1969 Apollo 11 landing was staged, but the evidence overwhelmingly proves otherwise. We have rock samples, scientific data, and even retroreflectors left on the moon that scientists still use to measure distances today. Plus, thousands of people worked on the Apollo missions, keeping a secret that big would be impossible. So, there you have it, 12 space myths that you probably believed, busted by science. Space is already full of mysteries and wonders, and the real facts are often more amazing than fiction. If you enjoyed this, hit that like button and subscribe for more mind-blowing space discoveries. The universe is vast, and there's still so much to learn. Who knows what myths we'll debunk next?